Microservices has become very popular in the current industry, and it has recently been on the rise because they can solve many IT challenges such as increasing speed, scalability of applications, and rapid test processes. Now, big MNCs like Amazon, Google, and eBay independently develop a similar architectural scheme around the same period. Hey guys, welcome to this session on microservices interview questions, where we're going to learn about the basic questions that you can be asked on microservices. Now, followed by a few intermediate questions for better understanding of the concept. Then we're going to discuss microservices MCQs to be solved. Lastly, we will talk about the microservices certification training course that is available to help you get a better understanding of the topic. But before we go ahead, if you like our videos, please subscribe to the Edureka YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to never miss out on any updates. Also, if you guys are interested in our certification training, do check out the link given in the description below. So without any further ado, let's start with the basic interview questions. So the first question that we have is, what are the main features of microservices? There are 8 main features of microservices. Now let's go through each one of them. Now the first features that we have is decoupling. So that means your application can be easily decoupled or rather separated to have individual functionality. That means it assures easy development, maintenance, and deployment. So the second feature is componentization. Now in componentization, what happens in microservices are viewed as independent components. Now that can be easily exchanged or upgraded. Now they are loosely coupled with other services. That is why each microservices can be thought of a single component or a container. Now the third feature is business capabilities. Now business capabilities can be focused much better since you are setting up a smaller goals. Microservices are relatively simple and only focus on one service. Now your fourth feature is autonomy. What happened is your developer are now more relaxed since we are talking about small cluster of teams. So each developers work independently of each other, now allowing for a faster project timeline. Now the fifth feature is its continuous delivery. Now since we already have many features, now this ensures you have constant and enable frequent software releases through semantic automation of software development, testing, and approval. So your sixth feature is responsibility. Now microservices are not focused on applications as a project, rather they see application as a product, so which they are more responsible for. And your seventh main features is decentralized governance. Now what happened is, since you have individual application, it is very important to have an independent approach of the life cycle of each microservice since they are working independently. Now they should be managed independently as well, so choosing the right tools according to the jobs is the goal. Now developers can choose the best tools to solve their problems. And your last feature is agility. So now what happens is, since you have a decentralized architecture, microservices facilitate agile development, which make it possible to create new features quickly and discard them again at any time. Now moving on to the next question, what are the main components of microservices? Now some of the main components of microservices are, number one is we have containers, clustering, and orchestration. The second is we have IAC, or simply known as infrastructure as code conception. Then we have a cloud infrastructure, and then we have an API gateway, the enterprise service bus, and lastly we have the service delivery. The next question that we have is, what are the benefits and drawback of microservices? So let's us discuss first the benefits of the microservices, then we will go ahead and see what are the drawbacks of microservices. So the first point of the benefits are, it is self-contained and independent deployment module. And the second benefit is its independent managed services. And the third point is that in order to improve the performance, the demand services can be deployed on multiple servers. Now the fourth point is that it is easier to test and have fewer dependencies. So the fifth benefit is its greater degree of scalability and agility. Also its simplicity in debugging and maintenance, for its better communication between developers and business users. And the last benefit is its development teams of a smaller size increase the scale and is agility and faster development in time. So those were all the benefits of the microservices. Now let's see its drawback. Due to the complexity of the architecture, now testing and monitoring are more difficult since monitoring has to be in a specific or an individual application. Now it's lack proper corporate culture for it to work, and pre-planning is essential. It have a complex development and it requires a cultural shift, and it's very expensive compared to monolithic and its security implication. And the last point is it's maintaining the network is more difficult since it's a small grain application. So now we're going to see the next question that we have is name the 3 common tools mostly used for microservices. So the 3 common tools used for microservices are 𝐸mock, Docker, and Hystrix. If anyone don't know about them, so 𝐸mock is a tool for building mock APIs, and a Docker is a software platforms that allow you to build, test, and deploy application quickly. Now, a Hystrix is a library that controls the interaction between microservices to provide latency and fault tolerance. Additionally, it makes sense to modify the user interface to let the user know that something is not working as expected or it will take more time. So those were the 3 common tools used for microservices. Now let's go ahead and see the next question that we have. So in this question, we will understand the working of a microservice architecture. So how does the architecture of a microservice work? Now when you talk about the microservice architecture, there is no particular pattern for this kind of architecture because it can be very complex at times, and if you have n numbers of microservices, all of those will have different architecture. But you have to understand one thing, their basic remains the same. That means no matter how complex or how big actually the architecture is, it will never be complicated because we are developing small application, and each of these application will have an architecture that is more or less like this. So what do we have here basically? As you can see in the figure, you have a client, an identity provider, API gateway, the static content management, the service discovery, CDN or a content delivery network, and remote service. So basically what happened is if a client wants to use a particular service, now the client will send a request from any device. Now it is the job of an identity provider to validate a user's or a client identity and issues a security token. Now once the identity provider authenticates the user, the request is then forwarded to the API gateway. Now because the client cannot directly communicate to a service, there has to be some intermediate approach in betweens that let us communicate with the microservices as well. Now in this case, what happened is if we have an API gateway, now this API gateway finds the right service that a client is looking for and the request is forwarded to that service. The service basically communicate it with other services and see how a solution is generated for this so-called client. And once the solution is generated, it is sent back to the client using your CDN. Now a CDN is, I've already explained to you, it's a content delivery network. Now the static calling network, what basically that is whenever content that is generated and it is in the form of static, it is basically held by a static content, and the management and the service discovery portal, they have a particular task as well. Now what they do is, for example, we have n numbers of services. Now the management console or the portal places those services on respective nodes. Now service discovery on the other hand keep a track of all these services. Now makes notes of services that have failed and all those things, and this record is communicated back to the management portal, and it is the job of this management portal to go ahead and resolve it if there's any failure in the corresponding architecture or any of their services. So these components, all of them, they work in tandem, and this is how they bring the architecture together. I hope you understand now the working of the microservice architecture. So moving on to the next question, what's the difference between monolithic, SOA, that is your service oriented architecture, and microservices architecture? So let us understand one by one each one of them. So the first thing we have is a monolithic architecture. So a monolithic architecture is like a big container where all the software components of an application are bundled together tightly. Now they are usually built as a large system and it is one code base. And so the next thing that we have is your SOA, that's just nothing with your service-oriented architecture. So it is a group of services interacting or communicating with each other. Now, depending on the nature of the communication, it can be simple data exchange or it can involve several services coordinating some activities. And the last one we have is your microservice architecture. So a microservice architecture involves structuring an application in the form of cluster of small autonomous service modeled around a business domain. Now what happens is these function modules can be developed independently or deployed independently, and they are capable and are aimed at achieving specific business goal and communicate with each other over standard protocols. So these were all the differences between the monolithic service-oriented architecture and the microservice architecture. So coming to the next question, we have explain Spring Cloud and Spring Boot. So let us first understand what is Spring Cloud and then we will understand Spring Boot. So Spring Cloud in a microservices, it is a system that integrates with external system. Now this is a short life framework designed to build application quickly. It contributes significantly to microservice architecture due to its association with a finite amount of data processing. And when it comes to Spring Boot, a Spring Boot is an open source Java-based framework that provides its developers with a platform on which they can create standalone, production-grade Spring application. In addition to reducing development time and increasing productivity, it is easily understood. Now let's see the next question. So the next question that we have is, what is the role of actuator in Spring Boot? So a Spring Boot actuator is a project that provides RESTful web service to access the current state of an application that is running in production. Now in addition, you can monitor and manage application usage in a production environment without having to code or configure any of the applications. So this was the role of an actuator in a Spring Boot. Now coming to the next question, we have, what issues are generally solved by a Spring Cloud? So the following problems can be solved with a Spring Cloud. So number one we have is a complicated issue caused by distributed system. Now these include such as your network issue, latency problems, then the bandwidth problems and security issues. Now the second problems that we have is the security discovery issue. Now with service discovery, it allows processes and services to communicate and locate each other within a cluster. And then the third is your redundancy issue. Now distributed system can often have redundancy issue. And the next point is your load balancing issues. Now optimizing the distribution of workload among multiple computing resources, including computer clusters, central processing unit and network links. And the last issue solved by the Spring Clouds are reduced performance issues. Now reduced performance issue caused by virtual operation overheads. And the next question that we have is, what do you mean by cohesion and coupling? If we talk about coupling, it is defined as a relationship between a software module A and a module B, and how much one module depends or interact with another coupling or another module. Say coupling falls into three major categories. Now you can say a module can be highly coupled or loosely coupled and uncoupled from each other. Now the best kind of coupling is loose coupling, which is achieved through interface. As you can see here in the example, a coupling is given by module A and a module B, which is coupled together as a module C. So there can be different types of coupling, or we can say there falls into three major categories. That is your highly coupled, loosely coupled and the uncoupled. And when we talk about cohesion, it is defined as a relationship between two or more parts or element of a module that serves the same purpose. Now generally a module with high cohesion can perform a specific function essentially without needing communication with any other modules. So a high cohesion enhances the functionality of the module. So those were the definition or the meaning or the differences between a cohesion and a coupling. Now getting back to the next question, we have, what are the challenges with microservice architecture? Now when we talk about challenges, the first thing that comes into your mind is automating the component. Yes, you can go ahead and automate the component by maintaining these components. Say in a use task and automation is working smoothly, something that needs instant attention. Now, when we talk about perceptibility and configuration management, you need to understand that this is nothing but an approach that deals with the complete design that we are talking about and configuring these many microservices and having a clear architecture. Now, this can be a problem at times, maybe in debugging or another issue, because we have fault isolation, and if some application fails, it does not affect the working of any other application. But that also means that you have to continuously keep on monitoring these applications, or individually monitoring is something that has to be done. That is why when we talk about system failure, dealing with such failures can be a problems in the overall architecture. Now, even if it does not affect the function of all application. So those were the challenges with microservice architecture. So coming to the next question we have is, what do you mean by a bounded context? Now, a bounded context is a central pattern in DDD, or domain-driven design. Now, this deals with collaboration across large modules and teams. The domain-driven design breaks large modules down to multiple contexts to make them more manageable. Now, additionally, it explains their relationship explicitly. Now, the concept promotes an object-oriented approach to develop services bound to a data model, and is also responsible for ensuring the integrity and mutability of a set of data models, and is also in charge of making sure the data model is both mutable and intact. Now, coming to the next question we have, write the fundamental characteristic of a microservice design. Now, these are some of the fundamental characteristics of a microservice design. First is we have a base on business capabilities, then products, then and not projects, essential messaging framework, decentralized governance, decentralized data management, automated infrastructure, and design for failures. So if we talk about based on business capabilities, microservices are divided and organized around business capabilities. And when we talk about product and not projects, it means that a product should belong to the team that handles it. And when we talk about essential messaging framework, it relies on functional messaging framework, and it eliminates the centralized services buses by embracing the concept of decentralization. Now, when we talk about decentralized governance, the development teams are accountable for all aspects of the software they produce. Then the difference between a decentralized governance and a decentralized data management is, in a microservices, in a decentralized data management allow each services to manage its data separately. Then coming to the automated infrastructure. Now, these systems are complete and can be deployed independently, as a microservices is built and handled separately, since it's a refined grained system. And the last fundamental characteristic of a microservice design is its design for failure. Now, it increases the tolerance for failure of services by focusing on continuous monitoring of the applications. Coming to the next question we have, what are the challenges that one has to face while using a microservices? Now, there are two types of challenges when it comes to microservices. First, you have the functional challenges, and the second part is you have your technical challenges. Now, when we talk about the functional challenges, it requires a heavy infrastructure setup. Now, it needs heavy investment, and it requires excessive planning to handle or manage operation overhead. And now when it comes to the technical challenges, the microservices are always independent. Therefore, they must communicate with each other, and it is heavily involved model because it is a distributed system. Now, you need to be prepared for operation overhead if you are using a microservice architecture. Now, to support the heterogeneous distributed microservices, you need skilled professionals. Now, it is difficult to automate because of the number of small components. For that reason, each component must be built, deployed, and monitored separately. So this is why it is difficult to manage and configure across different environments for all the components. Now, challenges associated with deployment, debugging, and testing are some of the challenges that one has to face while using a microservices. Now, coming to the next question we have, explain PAC in microservices. Now, PAC is defined as an open source tool that allows service providers and consumer to test interaction in isolation against contracts that have been made to increase the reliability of microservice integration. It also offers support for numerous languages such as Ruby, Java, Scala, Net, JavaScript, Swift, Object, and Object-C. Coming to the next question we have, explain how independent microservices communicate with each other. Now, communication between microservices can take place through an HTTP or a REST with JSON or binary protocol for request response. Then we have a WebSocket for streaming and a broker or a server program that uses advanced routing algorithm. Now we have something like a RabbitMQ, NAT, Kafka, etc. Now they can be used as a message broker. Now each is designed or built to handle a particular message schematic. Now you can use backend as a service like Space Cloud to automate your entire backend. So coming to the next question, we have explain CDC. As the name implies, a CDC, that is your consumer driven contract, basically ensures service communication compatibility by establishing an agreement between a consumer and a service provider regarding the format of the data exchange between them. An agreement like this is called a contract. Basically, it is a pattern used to develop microservices so that they can be efficiently used by external system. So these are some of the microservice basic questions. Now that we have gone through these basic questions, now let's level up and understand a few intermediate questions on microservices for experienced candidate. Now for that, we will start off by what do you mean by a semantic monitoring? Now the semantic monitoring method, also called synthetic monitoring, now they are used for automated tests and monitoring of the application. Now they are used to identify errors in business processes. This technology provides a deeper look into the transaction performance, now its service availability and the overall application performance. Now it catches bugs in transaction and provide an overall higher level of performance. Now coming to the next question is we have what do you mean by a domain-driven design? Now a domain-driven design is basically an architectural style that is based on object-oriented analysis, design, approach and principles. Now in this approach, what happened is the business domain is modeled carefully in software without regards to how the system actually works. By interconnecting related components of the software system into a continuous evolving system, now it facilitates that development of complex system. Now there are three fundamental principles underlying. The one is your concentration on the core domain and domain logics. Then it analyzes domain models to high complex design, and it engages in regular collaboration with the domain expert to improve the application models and address emerging domain issues. With the domain-driven design, it increases its maintainability, testability, reduce complexity, mapping to domain knowledge-rich design. Then it brings business and service together, context, focus, and its ubiquitous language. Coming to the next question, we have what do you mean by an end-to-end microservice testing? Usually an end-to-end or an E2E microservice testing is an uncoordinated, high-cost technique that is used to ensure that all components work together for a complete user journey. Now usually it is done through the user interface, mimicking how it appears to the user, and it ensures all processes in the workflow are working properly. Now coming to the next question we have is explain the term Edureka in microservices. The Edureka server, also referred to as a Netflix service discovery server, is an application that keeps tracks of all the client service application. Now as every microservice registered to Edureka server knows all the client's application running on different ports and IP addresses. Now it is generally using Spring Cloud and it's not heavy on the application development process. Now coming to the next question we have is explain the way to implement service discovery in microservice architecture. Now there are many ways to set up a service discovery, but Netflix Edureka is the most efficient. Now this is a hassle-free procedure that doesn't add much weight to the application. It also supports a wide range of web applications. A number of annotations are provided by a Spring Cloud. Now it makes it as simple as possible and hide the complex concepts. Coming to the next question we have explained the importance of reports and dashboards in microservices. Now monitoring a system usually involves the use of reports and dashboard. Now using a report and a dashboard for microservices can help you in certain ways. Determine which microservices support which resources. Then it determines which services are impacted whenever changes are made or occur to components. Then they make documentation easy to access whenever it's required. And it reviews deployed component version. And it also helps you to determine the level of maturity and compliance from the component. So these are some of the importance of reports and dashboards in microservices that can help in the microservice application. Now, coming to the next question, we have what are reactive extension in microservices? Now, a reactive extension, also known as an RX, is basically a design approach that calls multiple services and then generate a single response by combining these results. Now, the calls can then either be blocking or non-blocking. It can either be asynchronous or non-synchronous or an asynchronous. Then a popular tool in the distributed system, an RX or a reactive extension, exactly opposites to the legacy flow. Coming to the next question, we have explain the type of tests mostly used in microservices. Now, as there are multiple microservices working together, now microservices testing becomes quite complex when working with microservices. Now, consequently, tests are categorized according to their level. Then you can have a bottom level test, a middle level test, and a top level test. So bottom level tests are those that deals with technology such as a unit test and performance test. Now this is completely automated process. Now when we talk about the middle level tests, we have the exploratory tests such as stress test and a usability test. And last but not the least, the top level tests. Now in the top level testing, we have a limited number of acceptance tests. The acceptance tests help stakeholders understand and verify the software features. So these are the different types of tests mostly used in microservices. Now coming to the next question we have is, what do you mean by MyCon test pyramid? Now a MyCon test pyramid explains the different types of automated tests needed for software development. Now the test pyramid is basically used to maximize automation at all levels of testing. Now they can be including your unit test, service level testing, then the UI testing or the user interface testing. Now the pyramid also states that the unit tests are faster and more isolated, while the user interface tests, which are at the top, are more time consuming and are centered around integration. Now in accordance with the pyramid, now the number of tests should be highest at the first layer. Now at the service layer, fewer tests should be performed than at the unit test level, but greater than that at the end-to-end level. Now coming to the next question we have is, explain containers in microservices. I hope everyone understand what are containers. So containers are useful technologies for allocating and sharing resources. They are considered the most effective and easiest method of managing microservice-based application to develop and deploy them individually. Now using a Docker, you may also encapsulate a microservice along with its dependency in a container image, which can then be used to roll on demands instances of the microservice without any additional work. Coming to the next question we have is, what is the main role of Docker in microservices? Now Docker generally provides a container environment in which an application can be hosted. Now this is accomplished by tightly packaging both the application and the dependencies required to support. Now these packaged products are referred to as container, and since the Docker is used to doing that, now they are called Docker containers. Docker in essence allows you to containerize your microservices and manage these microservices more easily. Now let's move on to the multiple question types. But before I share the answer of each question, I want you guys to go through and solve them on your own. So let's begin with the first MCQ questions. Now the first question that we have is, which of the following technology are commonly used to implement microservices? Number A is Docker, number B is Kubernetes, number C is both A and B, and D is none of the above. So the answer is both A and B. Coming to the second question, we have name popular Java framework that is used to develop microservices. So option A is your Spring Boot, second option is your Spring Cloud, then option C is your Eclipse Microprofile, and option E is both A and C. So the correct answer to this is both A and C. Now coming to the next question, we have which of the following is a disadvantage of using microservices? Option A is potential for too much granularity, Then option B is there is no need for complex testing. Then option C is heavy usage can cause latency issue. And option D is all of the above. And the answer to this is all of the above. Now coming to the fourth question is, under which condition the developer should use microservices? Now the options are when they want to develop app for cell phones that runs quickly, then when they need to create large enterprise level application that are subject to frequent changes. Option C is when they want to develop scientific test equipments applications, and option D is none of the above. So the answer for this is when they need to create large enterprise level application that are subjected to frequent changes. Now coming to the fifth question we have is, which of the following is an advantage of microservices? So the option given are, number A is microservice components are capable of independently changing from one to another. Then option B is there is no greater expertise required to program them. Then option C is their size make them ideal for developers to write powerful ones in a few lines of code, and option D is none of the above. So the answer to this question is microservice components are capable of independently changing from one another. Now coming to the sixth question we have is, which of the following best defines a microservice architecture? So the option provided to you are, number A is an architecture commonly used in functional programming and object-oriented programming. And then option B is a small program that usually represents discrete logic that executes within a dedicated hardware or well-defined boundary. Then option C is a code fragment that doesn't exceed 10 lines of code. And your last option is an application designed for enterprise system based on a loosely coupled component architecture. So the answer to this is an application designed for enterprise system based on a loosely coupled component architecture. Now coming to the seventh question we have, which of the following best defines the term bounded context in microservices? So the option given to you is number A, cloud providers regions in which microservice operates. Then option B is a logic domain that is usually represented by the data consumed and emitted by a microservice based on its purpose, structure and meaning. And option C is common characteristic among entities belonging to one or more domain of business. And the last option is none of the above. So the answer to this question is option number B. That is a logic domain that is usually represented by the data consumed and emitted by a microservice based on its purpose, structure and meaning. Now coming to the eighth question we have is, which of the following enables production ready features to the Spring Boot application? So your options given are, number A, it's endpoint, B, actuators, number C, boot, and the last option is none of the above. So the answer to this question is B, actuators. Now coming to the ninth question we have is, what is the features of an OAuth include? So the option given to you are, number A, it is an authorization framework, B, it has scope access, C, it can be used for an HTTP APIs, and D is all of the above. So the answer to this question is D, all of the above. Now coming to the last question of your multiple choice question, we have features of Docker include dash. So the option number A is version control, B is placement affinity, C is easy modeling, and D is all of the above. So the answer to this question is D, that is all of the above. Let's move on to the last part of this session and talk about microservice certification or training course. Microservice training course by Edureka is curated by top industry expert. This training certification course will make you proficient in designing microservice application, then establishing communication between services, then securing, monitoring, dockerizing, and deploying your services on Spring Cloud, a hands-on demonstration. Now, this microservices training course is live, instructor-led, and help you master key concept with a hands-on demonstration by the industry expert. So that was all about the microservice interview question. Now, thank you guys for attending this session. I hope this will give you a better understanding of how to crack an interview of microservices with all the relevant questions. Now, if you like this video, please press the like icon and subscribe to our channel for more such content. See you in our next video. Until then, happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!